So without further ado, how about we rip in, and who wants to get us started by looking at the Western Force significant ins and outs?
Mate, I would love to. I've been studying this Western Force side, trying to work out where they're going to land. First of all, for the significant outs, we'll start there because there are a few. You got Greg Holmes and Jeremy Thrush, two stalwarts, both retired. Throw in Richard Kahui, who has been on fire. I swear he has another 10 years in his legs, but he's also retired. Fergus Lee Warner, back row loss, huge loss for them there, going over to Worcester Warriors. Then you got Brynard Stander has been released, which is a huge drop. I'm surprised. I thought that they would have rated him higher than that. Jake McIntyre, obviously one of the fly half options, gone to Perpignan. Kyle Godwin gone to Lyon, played out of position for his entire Western Force career at outside centre. I can see why he's finally jack of it. And then Byron Ralston gone to Connacht, and Jack McGregor over to back to the Shoot Shield to Gordon as well. There's some others there as well. Some plenty of other names: Lacey, McDonald, Masabaka, Harry Lloyd, and Reddy. Andrew Reddy was the other one as well. So just so many guys out from that team, and so much experience is probably the word that they're going to need to replace.
It's a funny one on the ins column. I mean, we've got some really big names. Falau Fainga coming across. He's going to have to obviously fight for that starting jersey. We've handed it to him. We'll touch on that later. But Jeremy Williams, a tall lock coming across. He hasn't had a lot of chance in the last few years, so I think he's really pushing himself to get some more game time. Bryce Hegarty covering fly half and maybe fullback coming from the Tigers.
Can I interrupt on Jeremy Williams? I wonder if I'd love to see when he signed that contract, if it was just before or after he, I think it was Jeremy Williams, I could be wrong, but or maybe it was Max Douglas, actually, I was going to say, who dropped the ball to lose the Shoot Shield final the last end of last year. It might have been Max Douglas, actually, I'll take it back.
I think it was Douglas, yeah. Bryce Hegarty, you missed the utility. Hamish Stewart coming across, wants to be fly half, by all reports, probably going to be inside centre. Rapeni Matayeli, another Matayeli. Geez, that's scary.
And you cannot have enough Matayelis. That's fact.
That's true. And we've got Chase Tia coming across from the Chiefs as well. There's plenty of other names coming across, but they're the big ones for us.
Huge. They've recruited well. They've always seemed to recruit well, the Force. But
lots of Kiwis.
Lots of Kiwis. I mean,
their problem's always been with retaining the team and trying to get some cohesion. So speaking about cohesion and how they put their best side together, Cargie, why don't you take us through your favourite position every week, the front row?
I was just going to say the other significant is the new coach. That's pretty big. Simon Cron.
Yeah.
Has come across. I forgot what Japanese team he came across, but as you'll remember,
he was the Toyota Verblitz under Steve Hansen as director of rugby. So that's not a bad person to be learning off for a few years. Come across to reignite, his flames for Australian rugby.
And you remember he got absolutely stitched up he was about to take over at the Tars, and Daryl Gibson was like, "Nope, I'm staying." And he went, "Are you sure? Because I'm going to leave to Japan. So if you're staying, I'm leaving." And he went, "Yep, definitely staying." Then he signed for Japan, and then 2 weeks later, Daryl Gibson's like, "I'm leaving."
We all know that Daryl Gibson was a spy brought in to ruin the Waratahs, but we won't go into that on this podcast.
Absolutely. But no, let's get into the best 15. Yes, I will start us off, please, with the most important, the front rowers, of course. As I always say, the highest jersey numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, most important to the team. We got Tom Robertson, Wallaby in at loose head. Falau Fainga, we think, will be starting at hooker, and Santiago Medrano absolutely locked down that tight head jersey and was immense for them last year. And in rounding out the tight 5, Isaac Rodder and Ryan McCauley, pretty handy pairing there. Ryan McCauley, I think, did again an ex-tar, certainly started growing a bit more into the role last year, and with some of the people leaving, like Fergus Lee Warner and whatnot, we think he's set for a lot of game time, so should be good.
Yep. When we roll into the back row, we've got Tim Anstey at 6. He's got a lot of versatility. He can cover lock, gets a bit of game time at number 8, even number 7. Kane Koteka, we think he can still hold on for at least some of this season. He's got some real push from a few other people's coming through. Ollie Callan for 1. And then we've got Michael Wells at number 8. Isaac finds Lilia Wassa at number 9. And the trickiest one, I think, to pick probably in this whole side is who's going to play number 10 with Reece Jan Pasatoa out for most of the season. So we've gone for Bryce Hegarty, Mr. Utility, to slot in at the 10 jersey.
Yeah, and I guess that one of the reasons that it's so hard to pick is just because of the fact that they have no centres. And you just got to work out which playmakers you're going to play in centre. So for us, we
play centres.
Has Hegarty played centre though, or has he only played?
No, he's 10-15 all day long.
Yeah, that's so.
Yeah, so Hamish Stewart's the obvious choice at 12. We'll push Bailey Kunzel out to 13, which I'll be honest, I'm not that confident with. But at the same time, I think their next choice was maybe George Pullman. So I just don't think that they're going to go with that inexperience. That's why we've gone that way with the Stewart Kunzel duo.
They also signed Sam Spink, who's come across from Wasps, couple caps there, 23-year-old. Pretty sure he's an outside centre, but again, he just doesn't seem like he's someone who's going to definitely throw himself into that jersey.
Yeah.
And also, I was just going to say, worth noting as well, Bryce Hegarty, this is his 4th Super Rugby team that he's played for now. He's just going to get Brumbies after this, and he will cap them all.
Following the Smith brothers to see if he can get to every side. He'll go to South Africa soon. Manasa Mataeli, we think he'll get it over the wood over his brother for a few more years yet. Tony Pulu on the right wing, and then we've got Chase at fullback, Chase Tier. So there's a lot of strike power in those outside backs, which is pretty exciting, to be honest.
Surely Chase has come across because he just wants to play. So he wants to start at 15.
100%. Just someone give me a start. I don't care who it is. I'll show you.
It's basically back 3 of Kiwis and then the rest are fly halves. No, they've just got to slot into others.
Just give the ball to the Kiwis, basically. It's Jesus. The reserve backs, guys, we've got Ian Pryor on the bench. We think that it was starting to be turning the tides with Isaac Fines, Lilia Wassa taking over him last year, and we think it'll probably nail it down this year as they both age another year. Obviously, Pryor will still probably get a fair bit of game time. Then we couldn't pick our inside back bench. Maybe they'll just run more forwards, to be honest. You never know. We might get Ollie Callan on the bench instead of one of these guys, but Grayson McCarr and Reece Tapine, they both, we think, are pretty neck and neck for that inside centre spot, inside back spot. And then finally, we've got Jake Strawn as the 23 jersey as well. I think probably earns his spot in the squad.
Yeah, that's all right. We didn't do the reserve forwards, but we'll just quickly rattle them off. Folletti Kai 2 in hooker, Angus Wagner and Bo Abra. Developing strongly, really, in the props there. And Nels, do you want to give us the locks?
Yeah, we've gone Jeremy Williams, a very tall guy, hopefully get some good game time to insert himself into this side. And then Jackson Pugh and Ollie Callan will be fighting out for a spot. I mean, we could see Jackson Pugh starting. We could see Ollie Callan starting. Pugh can even play a little bit of lock as well. So it's going to be quite tricky, I think, in that back 3 to really lock down a jersey. If you're not playing well, expect them to get dropped, and that's even Michael Wells coming across from the Rebels as captain. He is not a shorter start in this back 3 in the forward, so it'll be good competition.
And I think, well, look, while we're on that, we're a little bit of a spoiler because we're jumping ahead to a smoky, but Jackson Pugh just came off the back of an awesome season for Auckland in the NPC Cup, and he was playing number 8 there quite a bit, so bagged himself a couple of tries. It's just really grown in form, like size, stature, experience, like really had a really sudden, rapid rise, and played for Australia A and things like that. So you're absolutely right. Him and Callan, we could see feature a lot. We could be absolutely wrong, but we could see Jackson Pugh really getting amongst it. So huge. Harry, do you want to take us to the key questions for the Western Force?
Yeah, so I guess the first one you kind of touched on, Cargie, already. It's just what effect do you think Simon Cron is going to have on this team? If nothing else, he's had a very good group of people around him in his career so far. Cargie, you wanted to talk Cronny, so you get into this one. Sure.
Cronny. Well, you've gotten me completely off the cuffy, but look, I mean, he was great. He was when he was coaching in the Shoot Shield, just before he moved up to Tar's assistant. Like I forget which club, I should remember, but I forget which club he won with. But by all accounts, he was absolutely the best coach in Shoot Shield. And he's a Kiwi, and he's come across, coached many really, really good teams. I feel like I've forgotten everything about him just with the year or two he's been in Japan now, to be honest. But
yeah, I think a big thing for him is like he seems like he's got very high standards, So with these competitions that, for some of the positions, if you're not performing, I don't think he's afraid to drop you. I don't think he's afraid to pick someone up out of Shute Shield, to fill spots, because he's got a good, strong link there as well. But he was talking about that he wants to build a really strong culture where people want to play for the Western Force and try to bring, friends and family over and people that they, play with. So he seems highly detailed in the way he plays, and he's strong in his culture. So I think they're two probably key things for this side. If they've got really attacking minded outside backs and inside backs that can get the ball to them, it is all about detail. They need to look 2-3 phases ahead to create the space for their wingers and their fullback. So it'll be interesting to see how he shapes up with them.
The one thing I remember him saying, like August, like so early last year, is he basically said, I just want our guys to be huge and buff so we win the contact zones every single time next year. He said October's the start of preseason, but we're starting early. We've got the best nutritionists, the best strength and conditioning coaches to make sure that we are huge for next year. So if nothing else, Manasa Mateo is going to be even bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next key question, fellas. How do you fit? And I know there's one shortcut answer here, but Pasatoa, Hegarty, Kunzel, and Stewart into one squad of 23. And that's obviously assuming Pasatoa's fit. But there's a lot of playmakers there that are going to expect some game time.
Yeah, I think you hope for injuries. I think realistically for me, Pasatoa is the future of this side as a 10. He's made it clear that he wants to be there and be there long term, and that he's a Western Australian boy at heart. So he would be my first pick, and I'd be giving him game time at 10. But we know he's out for a large chunk of this season, so it then starts to feel more like we're shuffling players around to see who's going to fill that role next. Kunzel had started off as a 10, shifted out to 12. We're now talking to him about being 13 because he's quite a physical ball runner. I don't think he's a 10 anymore. I think he is a centre, and more than likely it's 12, potentially a 13 with that size. Stewart's played a lot of time being the glue for the Reds backline at number 12. So for me, he fits in there, and Hegarty's that 10-15 combination, can fill one or the other. So for me, I think the way we've gone, Hegarty 10, Stewart 12, and maybe Kunzel 13 if he's not on the bench with someone else filling that role, seems to me like the clear choice.
Yeah,
for sure. I think you knew that I would be echoing the exact same thing. Pasatoa starts all day of the week. My friend is an absolute phenom. I just want to see as much of him as I can. And I think you're right. I think, look, Stewart's clearly can still play 10, but he's a 10 or 12. And Kunzel, I think you're right. I think he has transitioned away from being a 10, and he's a bigger centre. So at the lack of having 13 options, yeah, he seems like the kind of guy who can get that done. So they kind of pick themselves there at the moment. But if they're all fit, I don't know. I mean, I think Hegarty becomes a great bench option, doesn't he? Because he can come on, play 10 or 15. So I don't know if he does himself a disservice with that. But it's really going to be the same trouble as always, which is, can they get the ball outside to the wingers? Hopefully with 3 former 10s in there, they can, So
yeah, that's right. I got one more, and this is a Cargie question. How many games will first year out of school Rupeni Mateele play in 2023?
Look, surely it's got to be about half of them. No, okay, I'm kidding. If I'm being realistic, like hopefully he gets on in 2 or 3 games. But
if there's an injury to Tony Pulu, then you're putting him straight in, or what are you going to do?
I mean, I would, because isn't it exponential? If you have 2 Mateeles on the field, it's like an exponential increase in performance in try scoring. That's how I think it works. So
absolutely.
But no, I think he'd be lucky to get a couple of runs off the bench. But you're right, if there's an injury or 2, I mean, there have been a fair amount of guys who have been in the squad a long time, really looking for some game time. But you never know.
I'd be leaning on him. He's going to get a crack. I reckon he's going to get a crack in this year, and he's going to catch us all by surprise. He seems like, by all reports, a very special player. He is very young. Tony Pulu is what? How old is he now? He's 34. 34. Was very patchy in parts through last year. They do have a few other names of players that have sort of filled the role, Reece Tappeney. But do they shift Jake Strawn in there or TT to the wing? I think we will see Rapeni Mateli get a crack. It might not be early in the year, but it might be off the bench after an injury, and he will want to stay in that 23. And I think he'll do enough to be, getting 4 or 5 games at least in this match at the back end, this year, the back end of the season.
I feel like you're doing the Kagi hype of just picking the new player and
mate, his name's Mateli.
That's fair. Look, you're not going to get any. I'm not going to contest you on it. I'm just not sure if I would have gone as far to say the same thing. But
I teed you up, Kagi. I can't believe you didn't go full ball on him. Just absolutely. So now he's your first draft pick. All right, fellas, pushing on. The stock's rising. Who have you got as the players that we think are going to really rise and make a name for themselves? Really, I guess, establish themselves as a good Super Rugby player. For some of those that are that way inclined, great fantasy picks as well. What do you reckon?
Well, look, I'll pick the low-hanging fruit here, mate. Chase Tiatia. As we've said, job done. Fullback jersey's his. Give this guy some constant game time and also give him, some space and quite a lot of attacking responsibility in that back line. And, I think he's going to absolutely just flare in this team. So I can't wait to see what he can do. But yeah, you can't really get more of a better scenario than going from somewhere where you're constantly on the bench to here's your jersey, mate. It's yours, until you get injured, basically. So hugely stocks are rising for him, I'd say.
And Nels?
Look, mine's Hegarty. I think before he left Australia, he was playing very, very well. His downside's been that he has been moved around between a few clubs, between 10 and 15, but he has always been the bare least serviceable. I think at times he's actually been quite solid and a really good choice at 10 or 15. This is a year that, I think he'll get a lot of game time. And hopefully it's not in the 23 jersey or the 22 jersey throughout the whole year, because if he's starting, I think he's a real threat and he's a real class leader of the back line around the field.
And I wonder if he's still got the turn of pace in those legs. Like he's not actually that old, I don't think. But you remember, in most teams he's played in, he's been like the surprisingly fastest player in all the teams. Like it's crazy.
He's 30. Yeah, he's 30, and he definitely has had a turn of pace in the past. He's 30's not past it.
No, it's not. I don't know. I just feel like because he's been at 4 super clubs and overseas, it feels like he's been around forever. You know what I mean? It feels like he's 35 or something. But okay, there you go.
Guys, stocks are falling. Who are the guys that we don't think are going to go well? I might go straight off the bat. I'm going to say Folau Fainga'a. I think he's been such a good player for the Brumbies for so many years, obviously having increasingly stiff competition from all the other Wallabies hookers in their side. I would think, the general public is going to say that he's going to come over, he's going to have things his own way. Ledikatu kind of fell out of the Wallabies picture last year, so he should be getting big minutes, scoring big points in fantasy footy and just all around, really making a name for himself. I actually think the opposite will happen. I think that he will get some minutes and Batu will probably sit behind him. But I think that taking away the rolling maul try, I just don't think that the Force are going to be able to get that going the same kind of way when you've got players like Macaulay in there that are just less experienced, and even the loose forwards, Michael Wells coming in, there's just not the same kind of cohesion. So I think you take that away from his game, it's going to be massive. And then apart from that, it always takes players 2 or 3 years to hit their straps with a new side. So he's decided to move the year of a Rugby World Cup, and then he's expecting to hit the ground running. It's a lower performing team, take away his easy scoring option where he makes an impact. I think he's set for a tough year. I think he's going to put himself out of the equation personally.
It didn't take Matt Daly 3 years.
It's Matt Daly, mate.
Wingers
are a bit different, to be fair. I think wingers are a little bit different.
It is, no, for sure. And also, you forget, Falafing has been at the one club forever, and he's got he's got the brotherhood there. He's got all these guys he's formed a really tight bond with in the Brumbies and the Wallabies, and he's moving the other side of the country. So it will be really interesting to see if he can reinvent himself. But I'm with you. He's struggling.
I agree.
Well, I'll pick one for stocks that are falling. And I actually think a controversial one here, but Tim Anstey, who's someone that, featured a lot all throughout my fantasy side last year, and I had super high hopes for. But I just think some increased competition from Ollie Callan and Jackson Pugh, and then Michael Wells in there as well. I was really hoping last year he would kind of lock down the 8 jersey, or for me he was one of the starting picks. But I think he might struggle a little bit. Just there's a lot of competition for those kind of back 3 jerseys, so I think that'll be to his detriment.
I think it's a good shout. Like I was tempted to not put him in the starting side of our best side. I think he'll start the year there, but I mean, we could easily see Pugh come in and take that spot. And with his versatility, he can go to the bench and cover anything from 4, 5 to 8. So he's got to come out firing, or else he definitely risks losing that spot
for sure. And Nels, you got any players stocks are falling in the force?
It's probably hard to say, but look, it's Reece Jem Pasatoa. He's a guy that we've had high hopes for, and he's had a couple sort of injuries now. I'm not sure if we get to see him through the back end of this season, or at what point he's returning. He's talked about, I think he's only 21. He's talking about wanting to be the best fly half in the world, not just the Wallabies number 10. And I absolutely love the attitude. But he's, a relatively bigger body 10 who's had a few breakdown injuries, like these joints seeming to break down, a few little kind of things here and there early on in his career. And I just hope it doesn't become a long-term thing for him. But I was so hyped from last year, thinking he was going to start every game and play every minute. And this year, we're just not going to get to see much of him. So no fault of his own, but yeah, he's falling for me.
Sweet as. And guys, look, we've already talked about Jackson Pugh. I pointed him out as a smoky, as someone who I think might just come out of nowhere, surprise people after only kind of playing a handful of games for the Force last year. Anyone else? I mean, we've also talked about the young Mataele, who might just come out and be the most valuable player in the Force. Who knows? But,
look, I'll go out on Ollie Callan. I'm a big Ollie Callan fan. He got a few opportunities last year. He's an exciting young player. He's 22 years old, came across from England, 100 kgs, 185 centimetres, but can play open side, he can play blind. He's very, very strong over the ball, which I think is something that, Kateka offers, but no one else really offers in this side. And I think he's probably a bit more solid than Kateka over the ball. So if it's something that they want to add to their back row, he's got a shout to insert himself into that back three of the forwards there.
Excellent. Harry, anything further from you, or can we kick on?
Oh, look, we can kick on. I would just make note of if you don't believe that they're going to play a backline full of playmakers, then you can put your money down on Spink or Pullman as a smoky just to try and get some game time with that outside centre jersey. But obviously, we are drawing some real speculation there. So who knows? Good shout.
I mean, we might even see some sevens players like Tim Anstey just get out in the back line and centres. Who knows? It's